when Yehoshua took in the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael, into the land of Israel, so Chazal tell us, and they elaborate, that it took 14 years for the Jewish people to conquer and settle the land. Sheva shekivshu v'sheva shechilku. The first 7 years of conquering, and the next 7 years of chazaka, of dwelling in those cities. So there's an interesting pasuk where the Gemara in Chulin, Dav Yud Zayin, derives of Batam Aleim Kol Tuv, that the Jews during the first, it's a discussion, the first 7 years, first 14 years, when the Jews were conquering the land of Israel, they were permitted kadli de chazeri, they were permitted to eat bacon, pig, treif. Based on the pasuk, Batev, they used to go in and find the good stuff in the house. So in fact, that's the whole discussion. The Gemara, was it the first 7 years, or is it also the last 7? Because the Gemara is talking about a case where not only kadli de chazeri, but basar nechira, meat that's not slaughtered properly as well, they were permitted to eat. In fact, the Gemara has the shaila whether they're permitted to take this food into the land of Israel when the laws of shchita started. So one of the things the Gemara says, if they could eat real treif, how much more so could they eat the leftovers? Either way, that's a whole discussion in the Gemara. So, but there was a stern type of heter for the Jewish people during that time period when they conquered Eretz Yisrael, to eat kadli de chazeri, non-kosher. So there's a major dispute between the Rambam and the Ramban on how broad a heter was, and how limiting it was. So we'll see it's a double machlokas, the Ramban and the Rambam. One will have a kula, and one will have a chumrah. So the Ramban points out it was an absolute heter, that when the Jews were fighting, they could eat and trade, even if they had kosher right next door, they had it in the car outside. You have easy access to kosher, doesn't make a difference. It was a blanket heter, they could eat treif no matter what. And the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, he seems to say no, only if there's no kosher food around. Of course, the Kesef Mishnah points out, we're not talking about sakana. If we're talking about their lives in danger, then of course you could eat treif. If we're talking about there is no danger. So the Rambam writes that if you're too difficult to get kosher food, then you have a special dispensation to eat non-kosher, but it's not some blanket heter. So a fundamental machok is the Rambam and the Ramban, whether it's an absolute heter like the Ramban says, or like the Rambam says, it's only limited if it's EFshar. And in the yeshivas, as they would say, it's according to the Ramban, it's hutra. It's 100% permitted. And therefore, we view all this food as kosher. And therefore, even if you have a choice of eating kosher, you can eat this food. And the Rambam says it's techuya, that if there's a need, you do it, but if not, you don't have to. On the other hand, the Ramban limits this heter to only Mechames Eretz Yisrael, when you're fighting the Zayin Amamim, when you're fighting the 7 nations of the world, when you're conquering, that's when this heter applies. But Stam or Mechamer, Stam or regular Mechamer, maybe it doesn't apply. And the Rambam is lenient, he seems to say it applies to any Mechamer, any battle, this halacha applies. So it's a double machlokas. On one hand, the Ramban is lenient that there's an absolute heter even if you have kosher food. On the other hand, he limits the heter to the Zayin Amamim. In fact, one of the rayas to the Ramban is that Torah tells us in Parashas Matos that we learned the laws of Agalas Kalim from Midian, that when they attacked Midian, they had to know about what to do and how to kasher. So the Torah in Matos gives us many of the laws of Hilchos Kasher. So the Ramban asks, what are you talking about? This wasn't the first war. What about Sichon, Va'og? They captured. Why don't we talk about the laws of Agola then? Why specifically over here? So that's what the Ramban answers. Because Midian isn't one of the 7 nations, isn't one of the Zayin Amimim, and therefore there was no heter according to the Ramban. So Midian wasn't one of the 7 nations, but Sichon, Melech, Mori was one of the 7 nations, and therefore by Midian you needed the heter. I guess according to the Rambam, it's just in case that if you can't kosher, if you don't have kosher food, but that's the raya for the Ramban. That only applies to the Zayin Amimim. That's why the laws of kashrus were given when we took over, when we had our battle with Midian. The Tue Jun in Rosh Hashanah has another shayla. He asked that when Yoshua conquered Eretz Yisrael, when he crossed over the Yarden, so the Gemara over there in Kedushin talks about it, Tosas in Kedushin, that they couldn't eat from certain produce until after they brought the Karban Omer. That's the whole discussion. Tosas quotes in Yerushalmi. Why don't we say Aseh Dochalosase? Why don't we say the Aseh of eating matzah? Le'al Pesach beats out the Yisra of Chaz. That's a whole discussion, 2 answers in Tosas. But it's not relevant to now. So the shayla is, why do you have to wait? If Kadre de Chazeri is mutter, then certainly Chadash is mutter. So according to the Rambam, you can answer, it's Techuya. Okay, so if you don't have to eat it, don't eat it. But according to the Ramban, why is there a need to wait? And similarly, as well, separating challah, all these other halachas, why wait? Why do we have to wait to a certain time period? They should be able to eat them right away. So, and what's the assumption is? So the assumption is that Klal Yisrael, so the answer is, according to the Ramban, that, and the Rashash writes this in Kulin, that it's not that we think that, it wasn't like they were fighting, maybe you say they weren't fighting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they weren't. They could have had a couple of days, a week off, so maybe during that time period. So comes along the Rashash and says, no, according to the Ramban, it was a blanket heter. It wasn't like, it wasn't like, okay, now let's go see, you could have a little more, a little less, but this is a blanket heter. And therefore applied 24/7. So therefore, he wants to know why, according to the Ramban, why did they wait for, for Chodesh? And as well, in general, we have another shayla is there's a whole discussion in the Rishonim, Achronim, regarding the question of eating treif is metamtem es halev. Eating non-kosher causes spiritual defilement. So how could they eat treif in the Eretz Yisrael? Kadre de Chazeri. It's metadem es alei, like the famous Chasim Sofer who has a shayla in Vienna, where someone was even a shota, and part of getting better, you had to eat non-kosher. Even though he writes Mikra, then it's mutter, but the famous one of the Chasim Sofer is mutter she'yishogin kol yama. Better to be a shota your whole life than to eat treif. So he learns even when it's mutter, it causes timtum alev, and that seems to be the Abarbanel as well. That, however, there's a Drasha Saran which learns otherwise. And no, if the Torah or the Chacham give you a head to eat it, so then it doesn't cause Timtum Alev. So, according to the Ran, so it's not a Shaila, but according to the Abarbanel and the Chasim Sofer, how are they permitted to eat it? Wasn't this causing Timtum Alev? That's a whole discussion they have as well. We'll have to get into it another time. The Aruch HaShulchan talks about that based on the pasuk in Divrei Yamin, David wasn't able to build the Beis Hamikdash, because Dam Shafakta, because he had blood on his hands. But he was doing a Dvar Mitzvah. So if he's doing a Dvar Mitzvah, why should that impact it? So if he's doing a Dvar Mitzvah by Eretz Yisrael, why shouldn't they be able to, why should that cause him to malay? So we'll have to continue next time.